amid the crowd holding someone whose kaftan hem was being cut. The Baron hadn't recognized Danila Petrovich. Besides, the sight was entirely unfamiliar to him, as he had witnessed this kind of execution many times. Meanwhile, he saw a woman wrapped in a cloak, desperately wringing her hands and trying in vain to get to the crowd to help the victim of the violence. Her tall, slender figure and the thick blonde braid that escaped from under her blanket seduced Dorfgame, who was always ready to fling his wings at any pretty woman. The wine he had drunk profusely had also fired his imagination. Leaving his friends who were shouting and mocking the prince, he ran towards a woman under the blanket and stood in her way. "Wait, my beauty. Show me your face and give me a kiss. The time has passed for you to hide under the veil like Turkish women." The woman froze, her arms flung out as if to push him away. With an insolent laugh, he grabbed her cloak, tore it off, and tried to kiss her, but suddenly he turned pale, mumbling apologies. Before him loomed Elena's face, deathly pale, staring at him with a look of contempt and anger. This silent scene was interrupted by Danila Petrovich. His kaftan in tatters and his beard cut in half, he managed to free himself from the soldier's hands and, foaming at the mouth, threw himself at the Baron when he saw him trying to embrace his daughter. "Scoundrel!" he roared, giving Dorfgame a couple of good slaps. Blood gushing from his mouth from the unexpected attack, the Baron staggered and fell into the snow. "ACH du, altes nichtwürdiges russisches Schwein. Du wagst dich in Edelman's Schlagen?" 60, shouted one of the Germans, throwing himself on the prince. Despite the Prince's Herculean strength, the three enraged Germans managed to knock the old man down, and he was rained down with kicks and blows from their clubs. They spat in his face, stomped on him, and kicked him with their feet. The violence was accompanied by foul language. But Danila Petrovich was already unconscious. They probably would have killed him if the people who had gathered then had not sided with the prince. Loud threats and curses were heard directed at the Germans. Fists were raised, and the crowd began to close in on the heroes of that ignoble scene. The Germans decided it was probably safer to leave. They instantly threatened to complain to the Tsar, and the frightened crowd let them go. Meanwhile, the prince's servants lifted Danila Petrovich and carried him to the carriage. Elena also hurriedly took her seat, and the carriage, paying no attention to the bumpy road, hurriedly sped off towards a house. On the way, Danila Petrovich regained consciousness, but as soon as he set foot on the step of the stairs, he staggered like a drunk, so that Ilya and Antip had to support him. The numerous servants who had gathered to welcome their lord were frightened and speechless when they saw the prince's disfigured face, his beard cut in half, and his tattered clothes. Old Matryona could not restrain a cry of terror. As if awakened from a deep sleep, Danila Petrovich shuddered, stopped on the top landing of the stairs, and turned to the assembled servants. With an angry, darting gaze, he scanned the room and let out a shrill, bitter laugh. See and admire how an old servant of the Tsar and the fatherland is honored, just because he did not want to wear a Germanic kaftan. Not even a vagabond deserves to be treated like this. The Germans, mothers, those filthy dogs, spit in your face, tear off our daughters' veils, and mock them. Ha, ha, ha. Remember well how they pay homage, nowadays, to Russian princes. He turned and went into the room, where the servants dressed him in clean clothes, but he did not want anyone to touch his crooked beard. Inquiring about his son, he learned that Artemy had gone out with a friend the day before, but was due back that evening. Ordering Father Varnava to be sent to him, Danila Petrovich locked himself in the room with him, giving strict orders not to be disturbed. In tears, Elena threw herself into her nurse's arms, and the old woman, with maternal tenderness, began to soothe her and led her to her room. But Elena's nerves could not bear the strain. Once in her room, the princess sank into the armchair and wept convulsively until, after crying her eyes out, she calmed down, her head resting on Matryona's lap, who caressed her and murmured words of comfort. Finally, Elena got up, scanned the room with weary eyes, and when she saw the gilded mirror against the wall, she shivered, her eyes flashed, and her brows furrowed. Take all the dresses and other rags, gifts from your aunt, wrap the mirror, and send everything back, along with the foreign maid. Never again will I wear this shameless garment, the cause of so much offense to me and my father, she explained, seeing the nanny's surprised face. I swear to you before Our Lady, and she pointed to the image hanging in the corner, "that until the end of my days I will never wear any other garment but the ones my mother sewed for me." "Oh, my dear princess, my ray of sunshine, God will bless you for this," Matryona exclaimed, crying with joy. The old woman immediately began to gather her things. When she was alone, Elena sat by the window and began to meditate. She no longer cried, but her heart ached with bitterness, resentment never before experienced, and wounded self-esteem. She was outraged just thinking about the savage violence they had suffered at the border post, and this bitter feeling of ulterior motive toward her soul. She wanted to scream how much she pitied her humiliated father, accustomed to seeing him always respected, while the hands of the vulgar soldiery treated the prince like the lowest of vagabonds. And that dog, Dorfgame, she said to herself, even dared to spit in his face and insult me, tearing off his cloak and demanding a kiss in the street, in front of the people. He didn't recognize the one he had courted, but just by her clothes, he should have known that before him was a noble woman, not just any servant girl. Her fists clenched, and again she was overcome with fury and contempt. So this is what this gentleman, this refined gentleman, so praised by my aunt, to whom they promised to sell me, is like? Outwardly, he's a sweetheart, but in reality he's a vulgar, savage man. And me, I almost traded him for Gleb. Thank God I understood in time. All these strange fads, these foreign customs that are now flourishing in Russia, are worthless. They only degraded our people and made us humiliate ourselves before the insolent foreigners. Some time later, Matryona came smiling and informed that all the alien rubbish, along with the maid, had left the house. She also announced that the prince had locked himself in with Father Varnava, asking not to be disturbed. Elena was left alone, and little by little her trouble subsided. During the night, however, she could not sleep, and only at dawn did she forget herself in a heavy, restless torpor. 8. The next day, Prince Danila Petrovich did not leave his room, as he did not feel well. His head ached and a great weakness overcame him. His body, he was dressed, as usual, in traditional Russian attire, and Tip was forbidden to touch his half-shorn beard. "This is how I want to be buried," he grumbled, sunk in his armchair, his head resting on his hand. He listened silently as Father Varnava monotonously read the gospel. On the table stood a pitcher and a solid silver cup, half empty of wine. Danila Petrovich was so absorbed in thought that he did not notice the arrival of his daughter, who knelt down beside him and, taking his hand, pressed it to her lips. "Dearest father, forgive me for having caused you so much grief," Elena said tenderly, pale and feverish with distress. "I have become aware of my insane blindness, and I swear to you that never again will foreigners seduce me with their customs. The outrages I went through with you yesterday opened my eyes." Danila Petrovich shivered, straightened, and a clear joy lit his face, aged many years in less than a day. He drew his daughter close and kissed her tenderly. "God bless you, my dear child, for your words. God's designs are strange and mysterious. Through ignominy and outrage, the truth has illuminated your heart." Happy, Elena approached the bench and sat at her father's feet, holding his hand and listening with devotion to the reading of the sacred writings, which had resumed again after its interruption. Thus, in this peace, about an hour passed when, suddenly, Ilya burst into the room, announcing that Anna Petrovna had come to speak with her brother. He had barely finished making the announcement when the door opened noisily, and Anna Petrovna entered the room with unsteady strides, as fast as her high heels would carry her. She was visibly upset, for her face, despite the powder, was covered with red blotches, while her faded gray eyes burned with hatred. "Oh, it was good to meet you, Lena. She fell silent as her gaze of mute surprise rested on her brother, and suddenly burst into a loud laugh. "Do you know what you look like? Ha ha ha! A bruise under your eye, a bump on your forehead, and a half-shaven beard. Who did you pick this fight with? You could at least trim your beard, so you don't look like a histrionic. Oh, no! That beard is a beautiful reminder of how new ideas are spread to us in Russia, and how they venerate, in the new-fashioned gray hair," the prince replied sarcastically. "I see. On the way back from the monastery, you were stopped at the border post and had your hems and beard cut off, Anna Petrovna observed in a tone of disdain and mockery. Serves you right. You're the one who tells you to be stubborn and have outdated ideas. I warned you 1,000 times about this, and even asked you to drop all this nonsense. CES, now my words have been confirmed. It will be even worse, soon. It will lead us all to misfortune. She turned with contempt and addressed him sharply. This morning I received incredible news. You dared to return, to see the presents I gave her, and to send away poor Suzette, whose eyes are still red from crying. She does not understand what she has done to deserve your displeasure. What does this mean, can you tell me? Elena approached her aunt. This means, she began, looking firmly at her aunt, that my blindness is over, and from now on I will no longer wear these short foreign ornaments, and I will never again grovel before the Germans. I have finally understood how ignominious it is to despise what is ours. I think you, girl, have lost your mind, Anna Petrovna interrupted angrily. Being modern, adopting the clothes and customs of people who are superior to us in education, you call groveling? You are an ungrateful idiot, since you do not understand the fortune of freedom, since you do not value the bountiful transformations that provide the freedom to leave home. Yes, they open our homes, but so that we could have more freedom, together with our parents, brothers, and husbands, to defend, love, and venerate our homeland, and not to insult and humiliate it in front of any outsider. Oh, she has lost her mind, Anna Petrovna interrupted, waving her hands in despair. What did they do to you at the monastery, since everything is going so well, and both the German community and the Tsar are taking care of your marriage? What will Dorfgame say when he learns you've gone mad? At the mention of the Baron's name, Elena blushed deeply. His brow furrowed, and there was deep contempt in his voice. I will never marry the Baron. Yesterday I saw that impudent scoundrel unmasked. Give the insolent man freedom, and he will abuse us. And you, who praise him so much, saying that he was a courteous, charming man, the most dignified the world had ever seen. Yesterday, while the soldiers were mistreating my poor father, that gentleman of his, who had come from nowhere, didn't recognize me, put his hand on me, and even wanted me to kiss him, and then he tore off my cloak. When my father came to him and pulled him away from me, he and his German friends rushed at him and began to beat him. The Baron even spat in his face. I beg you, don't even mention that scoundrel. I hate and despise him with all my soul. I'd rather adopt his habits than marry him. Red with rage and disappointment, Anna Petrovna was about to begin a lecture to her rebellious niece, when suddenly the door flew open and Artemy burst into the room. He was furious, his face incandescent, his lips trembling with hatred. As if not noticing the presence of his aunt and Elena, he ran to Danila Petrovitch, who had remained silent during his daughter's argument with her sister. Have you completely lost your mind, father? Artemy shouted harshly. I just learned that you dared to hit and injure Baron Dorfgame, and that you also mistreated Herr Schuster and Muller. I just left their house to apologize, but they are very angry and want to file a complaint. Artemy paused to catch his breath. Hatred was choking him. The prince gave a dry laugh in response. I don't believe it. You went there to ask for forgiveness? And you think you earned the respect of those ignoble adventurers who mocked your father? Don't worry. They themselves will despise you for it. Don't blame me yet. This is not the time when your own skin is in danger. Your foolish resistance to wise and useful transformations has harmed you greatly, while your incredible vulgarity of yesterday went beyond measure and ruined everything. These days, one can no longer indulge in the barbaric customs of unleashing one's fists on the jaws of innocent people. You must, without fail, go to the homes of these gentlemen and personally apologize if you want to avoid more bitter disappointments. Danila Petrovitch again gave a dry, mocking laugh, which further increased Artemy's fury. Is that all? Should I go and kiss their hands and apologize for having foolishly failed to appreciate the honor they bestowed upon me by spitting in my face and kicking me? Ha ha ha! You did well, my son, to apologize for me, for I am not the kind of traitors who grovel at the feet of foreigners like you, who can only giggle when your sister is humiliated, when they rip off her veil and try to kiss her in the street like that mangy German dog Dorfgame did. Since you have reached such a point of infamy, there is nothing I can do. But how dare you, brat, demand of your white-haired father that he go and apologize to those who have wronged him?" Danila Petrovich straightened up and looked at his son with a furious look. "Did you hear how a cultured son speaks to his father? Ha ha ha! Well, enough of this culture in this house. Get out of here, and may your foot never cross the threshold of this house. I'm throwing you out, and I never want to see you again." This time it was Artemy who let out a scornful laugh. "Really? Aren't you in a hurry to throw me out of the house? We'll soon see who is going to be the master here, you or me." And he measured his father with an insolent look. Danila Petrovich's pale face flushed, and he began to tremble all over as if feverish. "Shut up, you damn creature! Shame on my family!" he roared in an unrecognizable voice. But noticing an arrogant and provocative smile on Artemy's face, he grabbed a cup from the table and threw it at his son. The heavy object hit Artemy in the temple. Blood gushed out, and the young man, without uttering a cry, fell lifeless to the floor. A deathly silence fell. Anna Petrovna and Elena were petrified with terror. Moments later, they rushed forward. They came to Artemy, who lay motionless, his eyes bulging and glazed, his face covered in the blood that had flowed from his mouth and nose. Varnava approached and looked at the lying body. "He is dead. It is the hand of God," he pronounced majestically, raising his arms, "that has struck down the impure son who dared to offend his father's venerated head by siding with his enemies. His criminal soul will burn in hell until the terrible last judgment." Elena, trembling, knelt beside her brother and began to wipe the blood from his face. Anna Petrovna got up with unsuspected agility. "Damned murderer, infanticide, monster, your place is in the pillory," she screamed, shaking her fists and running out of the room. But Danila Petrovich seemed not to hear her. His gaze was fixed on his son's body. He seemed petrified, leaning against the table, pressing his hand to his chest and breathing heavily. He didn't even stir when a German doctor who lived nearby, summoned by Ilya, confirmed that Artemy was dead. Overcome with terror, Elena and the maid did not dare approach the prince. Varnava had already left. Finally, the prince came to himself and with a muffled groan covered his face with his hands. "Ah, so this is the true meaning of Praskovia. S words. I see blood in you, and what blood? How horrifying! The blood of my own son, whom I killed. Oh, what a sad fate! Why wasn't he the one who finished me off?" Danila Petrovich burst into tears, his entire impressive frame shaking with sobs. After taking a few steps, he grabbed the collar of his shirt. "Air! I'm suffocating." He stammered. His face turned red and convulsed. He waved his hands helplessly, as if trying to hold on to something, and fell to the ground. Elena let out a scream and rushed to help him. Daddy, don't die," she begged, mad with fear, pain, and despair. The bodies of the prince and Artemy were placed on the beds in their respective rooms. Danila Petrovich regained consciousness an hour later. He rejected the doctor's care. "I don't need a doctor for my body, but for my soul," he said. "The predictions of the venerable Praskovia have been accurately confirmed, and I will no longer see the dawn of tomorrow. I am dying, and my soul is burdened with a heinous sin. But the punishment of men will not touch me, since the heavenly queen protects the sinful servant with her mantle. Don't cry, Lenushka. What God does is for our own good." Some time later, the priest from a neighboring church arrived, a white-haired elder, a long-time friend and spiritual father to the family. He confessed and gave the prince communion, promising to remain at his bedside, alternating with Varnava, to read the sacred scriptures and pray. A long and agonizing night fell. Death seemed to spread its dark wings over the victim of fate, and the presence of the mysterious and menacing visitor oppressed those who were there.